This scripture, Hymn to Kālī, is brought to you by Not a Prophet org, the place on the internet to find spiritual guidance powered by artificial intelligence. According to the instruction of Tantra-Śāstra, the Sādhaka rises in the early hours of the morning, and sitting on his bed, meditates as follows: I am the Devī and none other. I am that Brahman who knows not grief. I am a form of being, consciousness, bliss, whose true nature is eternal liberation. Again at noon, sitting at worship, he does Bhutaśuddhi, and therein merging the 24 Tattvas beginning with earth in Paramātmā, and thinking of the Paramātmā and Jīvātmā as one, he meditates, he I am. Gandharva Tantra says that, after due obeisance to the Guru, the wise Sādhaka should think he I am, and thus unite Jīvātmā and Paramātmā. In all asthila dhyana of Mahavidyas, forming part of daily worship, Tantra-Śāstra everywhere enjoins meditation on the Mahādevī as not different from, but one with, the Sādhaka's Ātmā. The Kālī Tantra says that, after meditating as enjoined, the Sādhaka should worship the Devī as Ātmā. He I am Soham. Kubjikā Tantra says that the Sādhaka should think of his Ātmā as one with her. Nīla Tantra in the dhyana of Tara says that meditation should be done on one's own Ātmā as one with the Savior, goddess Tarini. In Gandharva Tantra, Mahādevī says, as regards the dhyana of Tripura Sundari, that the man who meditates on the unattached, attributeless, and pure Ātmā, which is Tripura as one with, and not different from, his own Ātmā, becomes himself her Tanmaya. One should become her by ever thinking she I am Saham. Again in the Kālī, Kulas, Arvasvasiva says that whoever meditates on the Guru and recites the hymn of the spouse of Siva and thinks of Kalika's Ātmā as one with his own Ātmā is Esakutrai Sadasiva. Similarly, Kula Macron R letter 1, E4, 7 Avya Tantra says the body is the temple of Devata and the Jima is Diva Sadasiva. Let the Sādhaka give up his ignorance as the offering Nirmalya, which is thrown away and worshipped with the thought and feeling he I am. It is not only at times of worship and so forth that the Sādhaka is enjoined to meditate on her who is Paramātmā as one with his own Ātmā. Siva teaches that our thought and feeling should be non-dualistic in all that we do, in eating, in walking, and so forth. Hence in the Gandharva Tantra, Siva says, I am both the Deva and the food offered to him, the flower and perfume and all else. I am the Deva, there is none other than me. It is I who worship the Deva, and I am also Deva of Devas. Again, it is ordained that at the time of taking Ka Macron R a letter 1, E, 4, 7 a wine, and the rest they should be offered to the fire of consciousness in one's own heart, uttering the mantra, and thinking that Kula, K, U letter 1 E4 7 DLIN. A Macron extends to the tip of his tongue, let the Sādhaka say, the liquid shines. I am the light, I am Brahman, she I am. I offer Ahuti to my own self as Vaha. He who does sadhana of the Mahavidya in Virachara, with such Advaitabhāva attains by her grace to Divyabhāva, and with the thought I am Brahman becomes liberated whilst living, and on death is one with Mahādevī. In the Divyabhāva, Esakutrai Devī says he becomes myself because both are one. Again, the Mah Macron Ni, RV Macron letter 1, E4, 7 a Tantra enjoins a similar non-dualistic feeling in the mantra to be said when taking the dravi wine. The ladle is Brahman, the offering is Brahman, the fire is Brahman, the offering is made by Brahman, and to Brahman he goes who places all his actions in Brahman. Saksidananda Mahavidya, in undistinguishable union of Śiva and Śakti, can alone be worshipped with such non-dualism of feeling. Although Tantric worshippers are divided into 5 communities, namely Śakta, Śaiva, VI letter 1, E6, 3 letter 1, E4, 7 a VA, Gia Macron letter 1, E4, 7 a PATYA, Sora the first alone are all Div, Ijas, since all worshippers of Savitri, Gayatri, the mother of the Veda belong to the Śakta community. The MA Macron T letter 1 E5, BK Omicron B HED A Tantra says Savitri, the mother of the Veda, was born of the sweat of Kālī's body. That Devī grants the threefold fruit and is Śakti of Brahman. Sadhakas belonging to the other four communities worship their respective male devatas, associating with them their Śaktis. Thus the Saivas worship Śiva under the names Umamahesvara, Siva Durga, Kālī execute a letter 1 4, 1 Kora, Ardhanarisvara, and so forth. The VI letter 1 E6, 3 letter 1 E4, 7 of VAS worship VI letter 1 E6, 3 letter 1 E4, 7 U under the names Rad, a K letter 1 E5, Bil, letter 1 E6, 3 letter 1 E4 7, L a K letter 1 E6, 3 Mi macronen, a macronar a macron, Y letter 1 E4, 7 a Siddharama, Esecutri Hari, and so forth. In the Nirvana, Tantra Sri K letter 1 E5, B letter 1 E6, 3 letter 1 E4, 7 a says to those who do japa of Rad, a first and then K letter 1 E5, B letter 1 E6, 3 letter 1 E4, 7 a to such I, of a surety, grant a happy lot even now and here. By uttering the name Siddharama Sita coming, first one utters the Tara of Mahādevī, and for this reason it is also called Taraka Brahma. The Sauras perform their worship with the mantra obeisance to Esecutri Surya, accompanied by the Śakti who reveals. Moreover, the Maya Bija Atrim, which is the PRA letter 1 E4, 7 AV of Devī, is added to the Mula mantra by every sect. This clearly shows that all these 5 sects are directly or indirectly worshippers of the Brahman, who is Śiva-Śakti Śiva-Śakti both in his NIRGU letter 1 E4, 7 A and SAGU letter 1 E4, 7 A aspects. KIVALYOPANI letter 1, E6, 3 A D says by meditation on the three-eyed, blue-throated serene Lord Prabhu Paramesvara, who is without beginning, middle, and end, who is one and pervades all things, who is wonderful. Siddhananda itself, accompanied by Uma, the Muni goes to the source of all being Bhutayoni, to the witness of all, who is beyond all darkness. Hence in the Tantra-Śāstra, Siva has said that Śiva-Śakti, Tattva is the cause of Tattva-jnana, and therefore japa should be done by a mantra in which they are united. That is, one attains Tattva-jnana, which is liberation, by worshipping Brahman as mother and father. All mantras being composed of Siva and Śakti, one should meditate on Śiva-Śakti as being one. In the Tantra-Śāstra also Siva has said that there is no difference between them who are inseparably connected. A VI and a macron BH a macron VAS a letter 1 E4, 1 BANDH a. He who is Siva is also Śakti, and she who is Śakti is also Siva. Fatherhood and motherhood are merely distinctions of name. In reality, they stand for one and the same thing. The Tantra-Śāstra again says that Śakti, Mahesvara, Brahman all denote the same being. Male, female, neuter are verbal and not real distinctions. Śakti, Mahesvara, Brahman, all three denote the one eternal Mahavidya, who is Saksidananda. Although the Mahavidya is in truth NIRGU letter 1 E4, 7A and eternal, she assumes various Meg forms, varying according to the GU letter 1 E4, 7AS, for the fruition of the desires of Sadhakas. It is said in Kandy that she ever appears to fulfill the purposes of Devas, and at such time she, who is Ruth eternal, is commonly said to he generated. In the Divyabhāva it is said, Mahamaya, who is Citrupa and Parabrahmasvarupini, assumes by her grace towards Sadhaka's various forms. We may meditate on Mahādevī as either female or male, for these terms may be attributed to any gross body. They cannot, however, be attributed to her, in so far as she is Saksidananda. Sadhakas of Śakti worship Brahman as mother, for in the world the mother, aspect alone of her who is Brahman, is fully manifested. In the Yamala, Siva says, Devī may my beloved be thought of as female or male, or the SSCCID, a macron NANDARU, macron PI letter 1 E4. 7 I macron may be thought of as NI letter 1 E 6 3 KAL a Brahman. But in truth she is neither a female male, neuter being, nor an inanimate thing. But like the term Kalpavali, a word in feminine gender denoting tree, feminine terms are attributed to her. In fact, the main cause of the birth and nourishment of men and animals is the respective mothers. Their fathers are merely helpers, sahakari. Every Jīva, on issuing from his mother's womb, lives on her milk, and receives his first initiation with the mantra Mom Mother. The first preceptor Adiguru of every man is his mother. She is his visible devata. His first lessons are learnt of her. It is the mark also of the earth to generate and nourish all jivas, like a mother, by producing for them all kinds of fruits and grains, and holding them in her bosom. Hence we are not wrong in saying that the world is full of the mother. In mathematics, 0 has no value, and is merely an empty formless nirakara thing, indicative of infinity until it is joined to an integer. But when joined to the figure 1, it converts it into 10. Similarly, when she who is formless Brahman is joined to her own PRAK letter 1 E5 BTI, consisting of the 3 GU letter 1 E4 7 AS, spoken of in Esekutruti as the unborn one, red, black, and white, then she assumes for fruition of the Sādhakas desires 10 different forms, Dasa Mahavidya, whose variety is due to difference in the proportions of the 3 gunas. There are the 10 Mahavidyas who are Śiva and Śakti, Śiva-Śakti. These 10 forms are Kālī and Tara, the Mahavidya letter 1, E6, 3 OD AS acute Imacron, Bhuvansvari, Bhairavi, Chinnamasta, Dhumavati, the Vidya Bagala, the Siddhavidya M. A. Macron, T. A. letter 1, E4, 5 G. I. Macron, and Kamala. Some Tantras mention 18 Mahavidya, but these are forms of the 10 with slight variations. Of the 10 Mahavidyas, Kālī is Suddhas, Atvaji, U letter 1E, 4 7 A Pradhana, Nirvikara, NIRG U letter 1E, 4 7 A Brahmas, Varupa Prakasika. It is this primordial form which alone directly gives Kaivalya. In Yogina Tantra, Devī says, now see my form, Rupa, which is Brahmananda and supreme. Listen, this form is the supreme state, Paramadhama, in the form of Kālī. There is no Brahman, form higher than this. In Kamad, Henutantra Siva says in the void is Kālī who grants Kaivalya. Tara is Sattva, G. U letter 1, E4, 7A, Macrontium, IKA, Macron and Tattvavidyadayini, letter 1, E6, 3 OD AS acute I, Mahatripuras. Undari, Bhuvansvari and Chinnamasta are Rajaprad. Hana and Sattva G. U letter 1, E4, 7. A Macrontium, IK, A Macron, and hence they grant G a U letter 1, E4, 7 AM UKTI in the form of heaven Svarga, Aisvarya, and so forth. The forms of Dhumavati, Bagala, M. A. Macron T. L. letter 1, E4, 5 G. I. Macron and Kamala are Tamaprad, Hana, and hence their sadhana is done in letter 1 E6, 3 ATKRM, such as causing death to others, and so forth. In short, all the 10 forms of Mahādevī give enjoyment and liberation directly or indirectly. The forms of the Mahavidya are divided into 2 groups, namely the Calicula and Srikula. So Niratara Tantra says that Kālī, Tara, Raktakali, Bhuvana, Mardini, Triputa, Tivarita, Durga, and Vidya Prat Y a letter 1, E4, 5 G a Macron R a Macron belong to the Calicula. And to the Esakutricula belong Sundari, Bhairavi, Bala, Bagala, Kamala, Dhumavati, M. A. Macron T a letter 1, E4, 5 G I Macron, Vidya, Svapnavati, and Mahavidya Madhumati. Of all the Siddhavidyas, D a K letter 1, E6, 3 I N a Macron is, O my beloved, the cause PR a K letter 1 E5, BTI. Kālī, Kula is for the worship of Jain, Yanis in Divya and Divyabhāva, and Esakutri Kula is for the worship of Karmans in Divya, Vira, and Pasubhavas. The Tantra-Śāstra gives an account of the mantras, yantras, mode of worship, and so forth for all the 10 or 18 Mahavidyas. But almost all Tantric writings hymn the greatness of, and give the highest place to, Kalika the first Mahavidya for the others are but different forms of Brahmaru, Macron Pi letter 1E4, 7 I Macron Kalika. The Nigama Kalpataru says of all castes the BRA a letter 1, E4, 7a is the highest. Amongst all Sādhakas, the Śakta is the highest. Of Saktas, he is the chief who does japa of the Kala mantra. Pikila Tantra also says of all the mantras of the Devas that of Kalika is the best. Even the vilest can become Jivan Mukta simply through this mantra. In Yogina Tantra, Siva says this Vidya Kalika is Maham, Brahma Vidya, through whom even the worst may attain NIRV Macron letter 1e 4-7. Even Brahma, VI letter 1, E6, 3 letter 1, E4, 7U, and Mahesvara are her worshippers. She who is Kālī, the supreme Vidya, is Tara also. The notion of a difference between them has given rise to various mantras. Again, the Kamak, Tantra says, O Paramesvari, 7 lakhs of Mahavidyas remain hidden. Of them all letter 1, E6, 3 OD AS acute I, is said to be the most sublime. But O Devī, the mother of the world, Kalika is the mother even of her. Nuratara Tantra says without knowledge of Sakti, O Devī, there is no NIRV a Macron letter 1 E4, 7a. That Sakti is D a K letter 1, E6 3I letter 1 E4, 7 a Kālī who is the own form of all Vidyas, SARV a VID Y a Macron RU Macron PI letter 1 E4, 7 I Macron. The Yamala again says as is Kālī, so is Tara, and so are Chinna and Kaluka. O Devī, thou, who art the supreme Kalika, art also the Marti which is composed of these 4. In the Vedic system Sagnaka fire, maintaining BR a Macron HM a letter 1, E4, 7 AS achieved their ends by the offering of oblations to the 7 lolling tongues of fire named Kālī, Karali, Manajava, Sulohita, SUDHU Macron MRAV AR letter 1 E4, 7A Macron, SPHULI letter 1 E4, 5 GINI Macron and Divī Visvarus, I first Saptaka, second KH a letter 1 E4, 7D a fourth Sutra. One another important characteristic of the Tantras, Astra remains to be mentioned. Although this scripture is very liberal in matters of practice and worship, and does not recognize distinctions of caste and so forth, it has yet repeatedly enjoined Sādhakas to keep this a carol. Hidden from ignorant passus, of Kalas it says that they are at heart Saktas, outwardly Saivas, and in gatherings VLI letter 1, E6, 3 letter 1 E4, 7 a VAS. It also contains injunctions such as that the teaching should be kept as secret as one would the knowledge of one's mother's illicit love, and that if it is given out the Sādhaka's purpose is frustrated and so forth. In the Gandharva Tantra, Siva says that only such men as are without dualism, have controlled their passions, and are devoted to Brahman are entitled to this Sastra. He alone is entitled, who is a believer, pure, self-controlled, without dualism, who lives in Brahman, speaks of Brahman, is devoted to Brahman, takes refuge in Brahman, who is free from all feelings of enmity against others, and who is ever engaged in doing good to all beings. Others are not true Sādhakas Brahma-Sādhaka. It should not be told to passus, to those who are insincere, or to men of shallow knowledge. For this reason, Siva has used symbols in the teaching of all dhyanas, mantras, yantras, and modes of sadhana of Devas and Devis. The meaning of these symbols is not known to any but the Sadguru. Hence, the secret mysteries are unintelligible even to the learned without the grace of the Guru. In the KUL a Macron R letter 1, E4, 7 AVA Tantra, Siva says there are many gurus who know the Veda, the Sastras, and so forth. But, O Devī, rare is the Guru who knows the meaning of the supreme Tattva. Hence, in order to know the true meaning of the dhyanas and so forth, there is no other means than to seek refuge with the Guru who knows the meaning of all agamas. It is owing to ignorance of the true nature of Devata that even Brahmavidya, who is subtler than the most subtle and consciousness itself, seems to be a gross thing. Even learned men do not shrink from saying that this Brahmamay, whose desires are fully realized, Pu, Macron R letter 1, E4, 7, a K a Macron M a Macron, is fond of offerings of blood, flesh, and so forth. In the J and tilde a macron NASA letter 1e, 4, 1 Kālī Ni Tantra, Śiva says, Agni is the diva of the twice born. The Devata of Munis is in their hearts. Men of small intelligence worship images. To the wise, Devata is everywhere. That is Carmen Bra Macron HM a letter 1 E4. 7 AS worship Agni as Isvara. See the Devata in their own hearts. Men of small intelligence, that is compared with the others, worship the Devata in images and Hais, old seers of the Tattva, see Brahman everywhere. In fact, much as a teacher shows his little students small globes and maps in order to make them understand the nature of the great earth, so Gurus counsel sadhakas of no great intelligence and of inferior adhikara to meditate on asthula forms in images and pictures, so that their wandering minds may be rested, and they may learn the true aspects of Devata. Unfortunately, however, ignorant men consider the asthula form to be the true aspect of the Devata. In the Kula Macron R letter 1, E4, 7 AVA Tantra, Śiva says that some meditate on the Yula to still the mind, which, when so stilled, can fix itself on the Su Macron K letter 1E6, 3Ma. The sadhaka should first learn from the Guru what quality or action each limb of the image represents, and should then practice meditation on the subtle. Otherwise the gross form will itself become for him mere earth or stone. In Kubjikā Tantra, Śiva says, O Lady of Mahesa, one should meditate on the formless here used in the sense as opposed to forms of images, etc., along with the form. It is by constant practice, O Devī, that one realizes the formless. Hence, sadhakas who desire liberation should always think of the Svarupa Tattva of Brahmavidya Kalika. Of this Svarupa the Devī says in Mahābhāgavata, those who long for liberation should, in order to gain freedom from the bonds of the body, meditate on that aspect rupa of mine, which is the supreme light Jayati, Su Macron K letter 1, E6 3Ma, and Ni letter 1, E6 3 Kāla, Nirgu letter 1, E4, 7, the all-pervading, unbeginning, non-dual soul cause, which is Saksidananda itself. This is the Svarupa of the Devī, which is beyond all mind and speech. The Ma Macron RKA letter 1, E4, 7 Deyap Ura Macron letter 1, E4, 7, says, the Mahamaya is Ni letter 1, E6, 3 Kāla Macron, Nirgu letter 1, E4, 7 A Macron, endless, undecaying, unthinkable, formless and both eternal. Nitya and transient anitya, that is, Mahamaya Kalika is free from Kala Maya, and free from Gu letter 1, E4, 7 As, without end, imperishable, eternal, and not transient as is the world Jagat, formless, and hence, as such, is not the object of meditation. In the Karma P, U, Ra, Macron, letter 1, E4, 7, Vi letter 1, E6, 3 letter 1, E4, 7U in the form of a tortoise says that the Supreme Devī is Nirgu letter 1, E4, 7 A Macron, pure, white, stainless, free from all duality and realizable by the Ātmā only. This state of hers is attainable only by Jnana. In the Kamata Tantra, Śiva says that eternal Kālī, who is Supreme Brahman, is one without a second, either male or female. She has neither form, adhara, or padhi. She is sinless and imperishable Sakidananda, the great Brahman. She who is eternal Brahman has neither appearance Avirbhava, nor disappearance Tirabhava, and being all, pervading, she cannot be said, like other Devas and Devis, to reside in any particular loka. Thus Brahma resides in Brahmaloka, Vi letter 1 E6 3 letter 1 E4, 7U in Vi letter 1 E6 3 letter 1 E4, 7U Loka, Rudra in Kailasa and Esakutri K letter 1 E5, B letter 1 E6 3 letter 1 E4, 7A in Goloka, but Mahādevī is always and everywhere equally present, though for the fulfillment of the desires of sadhakas she appears in particular forms in their minds and hearts. It is clear, therefore, that her asthula aspect is maya, made maya, and transient anitya. For this reason, Śiva, in the Gandharva Tantra, says that aspect rupa of the Devī, which is the supreme bliss and the great cause of the worlds, neither appears nor disappears. In the Kula-Kuṇdalinī letter 1, E4, 7 AVA Tantra, Śiva says, it neither rises nor sets, nor grows nor decays. It shines itself and makes others shine without any help. This aspect is without condition anavastha, and is being only satamatra, and unknowable to the senses agakara. That is, the svarupa aspect of the Mahādevī, who is supreme bliss, is the root cause of this world of three gunas. This aspect has no appearance or disappearance, and no growth or decay. It is self, manifest, and manifests all other objects. It is beyond the states of waking, dreams, and sleep. It is unattainable by speech and mind, and is being itself. In fact, just as fire which, though pervading all objects, does not show its power of burning and lighting, and cannot be put to use for cooking and so forth, until it has been generated by the friction of two objects, so although the Sinmay is all pervading, she does not become visible, nor does she grant one's desire without the action of sadhana. Again, just as the sun itself, motionless in the distant heavens, by its rays draws moisture from the earth, so the Mahādevī, who is the abode of all Saktis, though in herself changeless nirvikara, creates and the like the world by means of the 8 Saktis, Brahma Amacron letter 1 E4, 7 Imacron, VI letter 1 E6, 3 letter 1 E4, 7 AVI, Mahesvari and other devatas, presiding as her creative and other Saktis. For this reason in the yantra of Mahādevī Kalika, CK Amacron LI KOPANI letter 1 E6, 3 AD, the Sādhaka worships the 15 Saktis Kālī and others in the 15 corners, the 8 Saktis Brahmi and others on the 8 petals, the 8 Bhairavas and Vatukas Asatanga, and the rest at the edges of the 8 petals, the 4 devatas, VI letter 1 E6, 3 letter 1 E4, 7 U and others, at the 4 corners of the yantra, and the 10 Dikpalas, Indra and others, in the 10 directions as being the rays of Kalika, who is herself a mass of pure light Tejagana. The Mahādevī is worshipped as the Marti consisting of Sivas, Akti, Siva-Saktimaya, in the Bindu at the center of the yantra. Although the Agama-sastra, which grants Advaitabhāva and educes Tattvajnana, has been revealed by all, merciful Esakutrai Bhairava and Bhairavi, it is still unknown to a mass of people. Many in fact today despise the Tantra because it contains Virakara and Kulakara, and some even refuse to admit that it is a Dharma-sastra at all. If they had read the Tantra-Śāstra intelligently and learned its principles from Sādhakas truly versed in it, they would have realized how mistaken were their notions of it, and, instead of despising it, would certainly have admitted that this sastra is the only means of liberation for the undisciplined, weak-minded, and short-lived. Seeing that wine, flesh, fish are consumed, and sexual intercourse takes place in the world at large, I am myself unable to understand why many people should shudder at the sadhana of pen, himakara, be found in the Tantra-Śāstra. Do these acts become blamable only if made a part of worship, upasana? All know that ghee which nourishes and promotes longevity causes serious stomach disease and even death if taken in too large quantities, whilst snake, poison which kills, will yet cure and lengthen the life of a dying delirious man, if it be purified and given under suitable conditions with a cold bath, a diet of whey, and so forth. Similarly, the great physician Vaidyanatha himself has prescribed the mantra of Adhyasakti possessed of all Saktis, and the invigorating Panikam, Akara as sadhana suitable for the cure of the malady of existence, Bhavaroga, of the sinful Jivas of this dark Kālī age, and as a means whereby they may attain the supreme state full of eternal bliss, imperishable and immortal. All classes of physicians prescribe the use of wine, fish, and flesh in measured quantities for the acquisition of strength by patients who are weak and have a low vitality. On that account the medical science does not deserve to be hated. Similarly, the Tantra-Śāstra does not deserve to be blamed for prescribing the Makara for the liberation of jivas suffering from the disease of worldly existence. Śiva has nowhere said that sadhakas of Śakti should always drink wine, always slaughter animals and eat their flesh, and always enjoy women, and that thus they will attain liberation. On the contrary, he has counseled various means for checking excesses in these matters, and he has in particular controlled license by making these acts part of the worship of Isvara. It is the degraded conduct of a number of great passes who pretend to be sadhakas which is the cause of the public dislike for and hatred of the Tantra-Śāstra. In the Maha Macron and IRV Macron letter 1, E4, 7a Tantra Asakutri Sadasiva says wine is Tara, the savior in liquid form, Dravamay. It saves jivas destroying dangers and disease, and grants both enjoyment and liberation. But wine, if drunk in contravention of rule vidhai, destroys the intelligence, reputation, wealth, and life of men. Even a Kālā who has received a Bhi letter 1e6, 3 and 100 times is to be deemed a pasu, and without the pale of Kuladharma, if he is addicted to excessive drinking. In the Kul Macron R letter 1 E4, 7 Avia, Śiva says, O my beloved, he who kills animals for self-satisfaction in contravention of gastric ordinance, Avadhena will dwell in a terrible hell for as many days as there are hairs on the body of the animal. These utterances of Śiva clearly show that he has nowhere ordained the free use of makara by people in general. He has ordained virakara or kilakara only for sadhakas of the NIV letter 1e, 5, BTTI path who long for liberation. Such sadhakas, free from duality nirvikalpa as they are, wish to see the Saksidananda aspect of the Mahādevī, and Śiva has prescribed the makara to enable them to realize the Ananda aspect. Just as a man who knows not sweetness is given sugar or honey to eat, so the sadhaka is made to taste the fleeting objective, VI Macron letter 1, E6, 3, a Y of bliss Ananda of Panikamakara, so that, thus controlling his sick enemies for the time being, he may have a notion of the eternal Brahman, bliss Brahmananda. This momentary taste of eternal Brahman, bliss, makes the liberation, desiring sadhaka eager for, and industrious to gain it. But after the attainment of this natural sahaja, Brahman, bliss he no more longs for the 5 makaras and becomes gradually devoted to Divyabhāva. If a sadhaka takes wine in a limited way, after purification, the outgoing of his senses is weakened, and the mind or inner sense is stilled, so that he is thus fitted for Su Macron K letter 1e6, 3 a dhyana. For this reason wine is called cause K a Macron R a letter 1, E4, 7a. In the Kul a Macron R letter 1, E4, 7a Va Tantra, Śiva says, Ananda is the self-rupa of Brahman, and that exists in the body. Wine is its revealer, and is hence drunk by yogis. Wine and flesh are taken with brahmajnana for the satisfaction of all devas, and whoever partakes of them for self-gratification is a sinner. That is, sadhakas do sadhana with kamakara for satisfaction of the devatas whom they worship, and the development of brahmajnana in their hearts. But whoever takes them for his own enjoyment is doomed to a terrible hell as a great sinner. Śiva has also said in the Kul a Macron R letter 1, E4, 7 Avia, one reaches heaven by the very things which may lead to hell. The 5th makara, that is, sexual intercourse, is the root, cause of the creation of the world of jivas. All jivas, be they devatas, men, beasts, birds, fish, insects, or flies, are produced by the sexual union of their respective parents. In this world every male is an individualized VY letter 1, E6, 3 Ti Macron Bhu, Macron T, a aspect of Śiva, the A Macron Dipuru letter 1, E6 3 and C a letter 1 E4. 7 Di Macron says, all females in all the worlds are part of the Mahasakti. The Karma Pura Macron, letter 1, E4 7, says, the Mahādevī is herself one, present in many parts or divisions Ankavipagastha, beyond Maya, absolutely pure, Mahamaya, Isvari, eternal, stainless Niranjana, ancient. Consciousness Sinmay, the first Puru letter 1, E6, 3A macron Di Puru letter 1 E6, 3A of all Puru letter 1 E6, 3AS. The Gandharva Tantra says, the male form Pu letter 1 E4, 1So Rupam, the female form, and any other good form. All this is undoubtedly her supreme form, Paramam Rupam. One Brahman, becoming dual, appears as Śiva and Śakti, and that aspect in which there is union of Śiva and Śakti is the true aspect of Saksidananda Brahman. It is from this aspect of blissful Anandamaya union that the world is created, and for that reason men and all other creatures ever seek happiness. The bliss of the reproductive power of males and females manifests in their bodies only at the time of sexual union. At this time ignorant men remain intent only on gratifying their passion, but sadhakas, possessed of the knowledge of Kula, then meditate on the yoga blissful Yogananda form, murti of Śiva and Śakti present in the hearts of males and females, and, calling to mind the meaning, artha, of the mantra of their I letter 1 E6, 3 Devā macron, do japa of it. In the Calicula Sarvasva, Esakutrai Sadasiva says, by doing japa of mantra and by adoration of Bhagavati, the consort of Śiva, at times of sexual union, a man becomes, like Sukha, free from all sins. In another place he says, the consort of Śiva should be worshipped by becoming Śiva. True Śakti, sadhana consists in considering all girls and women, old and young, and of all castes, as the visible forms of one's own I letter 1, E6, 3 Devā macron, and according to one's means worshipping them with clothes, ornaments, and so forth, or bowing to them as mothers with the I letter 1, E6, 3 Antr in mind, and not treating them with neglect or contempt under any circumstance. In the Kālī Tantra, Śiva says, one should make obeisance on seeing a young woman of a Kāla family. One should bow to any female, be she a young girl, or flushed with youth, or be she old, be she beautiful or ugly, good or wicked. One should never deceive, speak ill of, or do ill to a woman, and one should never strike her. All such acts prevent the attainment of siddhi. At the present time, a measured use of wine, flesh, and so forth, and a thorough respect for woman, as for the Devata, are particularly seen in civilized society of the West. Satisfied at this, the Mahādevī, who is the queen of queens, has granted to the people of the West the light of science and sovereignty over the whole world. Esaku Trimet Adinatha Mahakala has, in the Karpurati Statra called the Svarupa Statra, briefly described the mantra, yantra, dhyana, and sadhana of Esakutramati, Dak letter 1, E6, 3I letter 1, E4, 7 A Kalika, who is Parabrahman, Prabrahmaru, macron Pi letter 1, E4, 7 I macron. This supreme tattva is hard to attain even by such Isvaras as Brahma, Vi letter 1 E6, 3 letter 1 E4, 7 U and Rudra. Mahakala himself says, neither Datta nor Issa nor Hari knows thy supreme tattva. However, in accordance with the teachings of my Paramaguru, Mahamahapadhyaya, and most worshipful Ramananda as Valmiki Siddhantapan Kanana, the crest gem of Tantrikas, now gathered to the feet of Śiva, I write this Svarupa commentary under the name of Vimalanandadayini, of this Karpurati Statra, in consonance with the views of Tantra and other Sastras. Prayer at the feet of Esakutrai Kalika, may the Mahādevī who is called Kalika, because she is without beginning or end, whose body is imagined to be blue of color, because like the blue sky she pervades the world, and because she is Sidgana 1 Sattvag U letter 1 E4, 7 Amoy Macron, who is imagined to be black because she is colorless and above the colored Gu letter 1 E4, 7 As, whose hair is disheveled Muktaxi, because, though herself changeless, she binds infinite numbers of jivas by bonds of maya, symbolized by her disheveled hair, and because she makes liberated Mukta Brahma, Vi letter 1 E6, 3 letter 1 E4, 7 U and Mahesvara, who are Kesa, who is imagined as having the sun, moon, and fire as her three eyes, because as the Virad, the witness of the world past, present, and future, she sees everything, who is pictured as wearing the dead bodies of two boys as her ear ornaments, because as said in Agama and Nigama, the childlike and unperturbed Nirvikara Sādhaka is very dear to her, who being the sole creatrix, preserver, and destructress of infinite millions of worlds, has on her body the mark of the yoni signifying creation, full and high breasts denoting preservation, and a terrible visage signifying the withdrawal of all things, who is said to have large teeth and a lolling tongue, and to hold in her hand a cup made of human skull, because the Sinmay Mahādevī drinks the wine of delusion arising from the tamas. Gu letter 1 E4, 7 of her Sādhaka by means of sattva prad. Hana Ara J O Gu letter 1 E4, 7 O, one who is pictured as wearing a garland of severed heads, because she is Sabda Brahman execute a BD a B R A H M O R U macron PI letter 1 E4, 7 I macron, and the heads are the 50 letters, whose upper and lower right hands are seen to be making the Abhaya and Vara mudras, because she both destroys the dangers and grants the desires of Sakamasādhakas, whose upper left hand is depicted as wielding a sword, because she severs the bonds of illusion for the NI letter 1 E6, 3K A macron M A Sādhaka, whose lower left hand is seen to hold a human head, because she grants him Tattvajnana, who is called Digambari, space-clad, because being Brahman, Brahmru, macron Pi letter 1, E4, 7 I macron, she is free from the covering of Maya 1 and unconcerned Nirvikara, 2, who is pictured as having a waist, chain of human hands, because hands are the principal instrument of work, karma, and at the close of a kalpa, all jivas with their karmas are merged in the avidya sakti of Mahamaya, who is seen standing on the breast of corpse, like Siva, because the supreme state, Paramapada and Svarupavastha, or Mahādevī, one with Siva, is Nirgu letter 1 E, 4, 7 A, and changeless Nirvikara, who is seen in Viparīta-maithuna 3 with Mahakala, because at the beginning of a kalpa she who is ever blissful Nityanandamay, and being united with Siva, feels pleasure in the work of creation which she effects by bringing the changeless Parasiva under her dominion. Vasabhuta, who is again said to live in the cremation ground, because when at the end of a kalpa all things in the universe from Brahma to a blade of grass are dissolved in Mahakala, she is in and one with that Mahakala, who may be thus compared to a cremation ground, and because at the death of jivas she exists as the individual Vy a letter 1, E6 3 Ti Jīvātmā in the burning ground, whose yantra for worship is composed of a circle symbolizing Maya, an 8 petaled lotus denoting the eightfold Prak letter 1 E, 5 Bti, 3 pentagons representing the 15 Advaitabhāvas, and a bindu denoting Śiva-Śakti, because she is at Paramātmā in the gross and subtle bodies consisting of the 3 Gu letter 1 E4, 7 As and 24 Tattvas, whose bija krim, 1 the queen of mantras, is pure sattva Gu letter 1 E4, 7 A, and consciousness Caitanya-may, and grants both enjoyment and liberation, who is worshipped as Dak letter 1 E6, 3 I letter 1 E4, 7 A macron, because she alone grants the full fruits of all forms of upasana and yajna. May she, this Mahādevī, who is Saccid, a macron Nandaru, macron Pi letter 1 E4, 7 I macron, and forgiveness itself, pardon all offenses committed by me in the explanation of this her hymn. Execute a letter 1 E4, 1 Bhu with his 5 mouths is unable to relate thy qualities. Pardon all my childishness, be propitious. Guard my life, guard my repute, and guard my wife, sons, and wealth, and at death grant me liberation. O Mother of the world, obeisance. Executri Vimalanandas, acute. Vami hymn to Kālī Karpurati Statra, verse 1 O Mother 1, and spouse of the destroyer of the 3 cities. 2. They who thrice recite 3, thy bija 4 formed by omitting from Karpura. Middle and last consonants and the vowels, but adding V macron M A macron K letter 1, E6, 3 I macron and bindu, 5 the speech of such, whether in poetry and prose, like that of men who have attained all powers, 6 issues of a surety with all ease from the hollow of their mouth, O thou, who art beauteous with beauty of a dark rain cloud. 7 Commentary Inner Sense with respectful obeisance to the beauteous feet of Svami Ramananda. I write this Svaru, Pavayakya named the grantor of pure bliss Vimalanandadayini. 8 O Mother Mata, the root ma equals to measure, to which is added the suffix T letter 1e5. B ch equals ma macron T letter 1 e5 b, that is, she who measures out or gives, she who grants enjoyment or liberation according as the Sādhaka is desire, ridden or free from desires. Spouse of the destroyer of the 3 cities, the 3 cities are 3 bodies, gross, subtle, causal. She is the Sakti of him who grants liberation from these bodies. As the power, holder Saktiman, and his power Sakti are one, it is she who is grantor of such liberation. Kaivalya, UP, an I letter, 1e6, 3ad says, from the Ātmā, the root, the bliss, looking on all alike who abides within the 3 cities, is born the multiple and various world, and into him these 3 cities are merged, they who recite that is meditating on the same as being one with the Ātmā of the Sādhaka. Kālikas, Acutruti says, one should always think of Ātmā as Kālī. Those who do, attain the fourfold Puru letter 1, E6, 3 a macron RTH, a whether directly desired or not. Todala Tantra CH. Romans 6 says, O Devī, K grants Dharma, R grants Kama, I grants Artha, and M grants M, O K letter 1, E6, 3a. O beloved, the recital of these combined gives NIRV a macron letter 1 E4, 7 AM OK letter 1 E6, 3, this at thy sattva saksidananda aspect denoted by the bija, KR I macron letter 1 E4, 1. Triple trikritang, that is the triple aspect sattvika, rajasika, tamasika. Bija denotes the aspect in which thou art the cause or the world. Although as SSCC IDA macron NANDARU, macron PI letter 1 E4, 7 I macron thou art NIRGU letter 1 E4, 7, when free of maya characterized by the karma of jivas and kala, thou becomest the seed in the creation of the world. What time jivas must enjoy the fruit of their karma. In the Divyabhāva, Devī says then I who am Ātmā, sit, para-Brahman and called the One, assume the bija seed aspect through union with my own Sakti. The causal body of which I have aforetime spoken is avyakta, in which the world exists as seed bija, from which issues the subtle body. Karpuram Sagu letter 1 E4, 7 A Brahman, the Kalpaka, or fashioner of the world, omitting from mu macron L a PR a K letter 1 E5, BTI, composed of sattva, rajas, and tamas Gu letter 1 E4, 7, as the middle rajas Gu letter 1 E4, 7, which is U macron, and the last tamas Gu letter 1 E4, 7, which is M. It is thus composed of SATTVAGU letter 1 E4, 7 alone, the J and tilde a macron NASA letter 1 E4, 1 KALI, and I macron Tantra says, A is sattvika, U is rajasa, M is tamasa. PR a K letter 1 E5, BTI is these 3, adding powerful to give NIRV a macron letter 1 E4, 7 AMOK letter 1 E6, 3, and by maya to grant the desires of Sādhakas, and in whom the pure SATTVAGU letter 1 E4, 7 predominates. The Tantra Kalpadruma says, K on account of its brilliance is the Sitkala, Jnana. Associated with the fiery letter, R, she is auspicious and full of all tejas. As I, she grants the desires of Sādhakas. As Bindu, she grants Kaivalya. Beauty of dark clouds, thou who should be meditated upon as of a dark Nīla color, because thou art Siddhakasa and dost possess the compact tejas S. Acute UDDHASATTVAG U letter 1 E4, 7I. In the Nirvana, PRAKIRA letter 1, E4, 7 of YOGAV macron S acute I letter 1, E6, 3 letter 1, E6, D it is said, because Siva is Vyoma, she is seen as black. Tripurasarasamukaya says, as being liberation, she who is attained by devotion, bhakti should be meditated on as being like the sky itself free from clouds. Verse 2, O Mahesi, one even should one of poor mind too at any time recite, but once another doubled bija of thine, composed of Isana, 3, and Va macron mas acute Rav a letter 1 E, 4, 7 a 4 and bindu, 5 then, O thou who hast great and formidable earrings of arrow form, 6 who bearest on thy head the crescent moon, such an one becomes all-powerful, 7 having conquered even the lord of speech, 8 and the wealth giver, 9 and charmed countless youthful women with lotus-like eyes, 10 commentary Mahesi possessor of the great power of creating, preserving and withdrawing. At any time, Kadasit Durgarama-Siddhantavajisa is of opinion that by the use of Kadachit it is meant that unlike other religious karma, which can be done only in a state of purity, Susai, japa of the mantra of Kālī can be done at any time whether one is in a state of purity or not, Saka Kala. Here he says one should not give up the worship, if there be a birth or death in the house. The Tantra-Śāstra says that one should do japa of the mantra, whether one is in the state of purity or not, and whether walking, standing, or sleeping. Recite japati meditate upon, of dual aspect, Divyabhāva having the dual aspect of Śiva-Śakti. The Tantra-Śāstra speaks of the king of mantras being generated by the union of Śiva and Śakti, another bija by Jamaniat, thy causal, K a macron R a letter 1, E4. 7. A aspect which is the bija HU macron letter 1 E4, 1. In the Yamala it is said, it is with the double sabda bija, which is HU macron letter 1 E4, 1, that she awakens the mass of sabda. Isana is Isvara. K a Thopani letter 1, E6, 3 a D says, Puru letter 1, E6 3 is the size of only a thumb. He is like smokeless fire, the Ashana of what has been and will be. He is today and he is tomorrow. This is that. Indu is immortality. Va macron mas acute Rav a letter 1 E 4. 7 is the power of granting speech and of attracting forms, rupa. The Tantra Bhidana says, U macron is Bhairava, subtle, Sarasvati, attractor of forms, who dost grant Rv a macron letter 1 E4, 7 a liberation. The Maha macron Rv a macron letter 1 E4, 7 a Tantra says, the forehead of her who is Nitya, Kalarupa, Arupa, and Siva himself is marked with the moon on account of immortality. Dost bear the half, moon Chandrodacud, earrings whose earrings things very dear, are formed of 2 Sādhakas who are like Mahesvara and simple as boys, that is child, like simple Sādhakas who have true knowledge are dear to her. In the Vivkscu, macron dia macron ma letter 1, E4, 7I, it is said, just as a boy plays with toys heedless of hunger and other pain, so the wise man plays happy, unattached and selfless. Such a Sādhaka attains all forms of knowledge and riches, and can charm the whole world. Maha macron Ghorab, a macron L, a macron via T L letter 1, E4, 1 Se. There is however another reading given by Durgarama Siddhantavajisa, namely Mah macron Ghor a macron Bal, a macron Vata letter 1 E4, 1 Se, that is whose earrings are formed of frightful arrows bana. Verse 3, O Kalika, O auspicious Kalika, one with dishevelled hair, 2 from the corners of whose mouth 2 streams of blood trickle, 3 they who recite another doubled bija of thine composed of Issa, 4 Vaisvanara, 5 Vamaniputra, 6 and the lustrous Bindu, 7 destroy all their enemies, and bring under their subjection the 3 worlds. 8 commentary Kalika Ka is Brahma, A is Ananta, La is Ātmā of the universe, I is subtle, Ka is Brahma, A is Ananta. Tantra-Bhidana. Thus it is said that Mahādevī is the subtle, beginningless and endless Ātmā of the universe. Thou who art Brahman without beginning or end. In the Asiddhastatra, in the Adibhutr a macron M a macron, Y a letter 1, E4, 7 Asakutri Rama says, I bow to that thine aspect, which is Puru letter 1 E6 3, a without beginning and end, the unmanifest. Cutastha superior to thine aspect, as PR a K letter 1 E. 5 BTI, the Ātmā of the universe appearing in multiple and differing forms. Durgaramasid and Tavajisa derives the word Kalika as follows. He who dissolves Kalayati, the world is Kala or Siva. And she who shines Divyati, that is plays Kridati with him, is Kalika Kala plus Ikan plus a macron equals Kalika. With disheveled hair, Vigilita secure, that is one who is free from all vicaras such as the passion for arranging the hair and so forth. Streams of blood, Asradhura, this blood indicates the red rajas GU letter 1, E4, 7. Mahādevī is without that, for she is Suddas, Atva, U letter 1, E4, 7. Recite Japati, meditate upon, of dual aspect Devī and Devī a letter 1, E4. 1 the bija HR a macron letter 1 E4. 1 is both Śiva and Śakti. In the Divyabhāva, Mahādevī says, H is the gross body, R is the subtle body, I is the causal body. I am HR I macron letter 1 E. 4. 1 the Turiya. Issa, who is the aspect of subtle bija. Vaisvanara, which is full of tejas. Vamanetra, that is, with maya consisting of pure sattva. J. U letter 1 E4 7. In do this is the Sakti, which gives immortality. 3-syllable D a K letter 1, E6 3I letter 1, E4. 7 Amakron Dakshine is Dakshina in the vocative, and the latter is the Saksidananda aspect which grants Kaivalya and is indicated by the 3-syllabled mantra. Nirvana Tantra says, the sun's son, death, is established in the south, Dakshina. The name of Kālī makes him flee in all directions with fear. Hence she is called Dakshina in 3 worlds. Kamakya Tantra says, just as a reward, Dakshina, given at the end of a rite, causes it to be fruitful and gives liberation. So this Devī grants the fruit of all karma, and hence she is called Dakshina Kālī. The same Tantra also says, Purusha is on the right, Dakshina, and Shakti on the left. The left conquers the right, and becomes the grantor of great liberation. Hence she is called Dakshina Kālī in the 3 worlds. Durgarama construes these words as follows. Dakshine Triaksharat, by sand, high Triaksharat, means Dakshine ATI Triaksharat. As Upasargas can shift position, ATI is placed in the verse after Triaksharat. Atatriakshara is the vocative of she, who has placed Shiva under her. This means she who has placed Shiva under her. The whole then means, O Dakshina, who stands on Shiva. Triakshara means the 3-lettered one, the pranava, and is used for Shiva. The Mahim Nastatra calls Shiva and another statra calls him Triaksharamaya. Durgarama also says there is a different reading for Dakshine Triaksharat, namely, Dakshine Kalikat, which he explains in 2 ways. First, Dakshine Kalik, it means Dakshine Kalikat ADI, which means Dakshine Attakalikat. The last word is the vocative of she, who looks like a bank of clouds. This means, she who looks like a bank of clouds. The whole then means, O Dakshina, who has the appearance of a bank of clouds. Second, Dakshine Kalik, it means O Dakshina Kalika. The word it simply indicates that she is addressed as Dakshina Kalika. Examples of the elision of I after E in sand. Hi are Shakuntalat and Meghajil Pi Kalikit.